Good evening and welcome to tonight's At Issue. First off, let me say happy Valentine's Day to everyone, including all those legislators out there whom we love with all our hearts, because without you, well, we wouldn't have a show. But now down to business. It has been a busy week at the Capitol so far. One of the main issues that caught our attention, religious freedom for school children. That's right, for school children. We will dig into that with some experts here in just a moment. Then, speaking of school, but not so much the children, how about the people in charge of the schools, the superintendents? There are bills in both the House and the Senate that would make superintendents appointed instead of elected. Feel free to weigh in on either of these issues by going to our Facebook or Twitter pages. You can find us at facebook.com/issueMPB or on Twitter at #IssueMPB. But before we get to any of those issues tonight, we have a special little treat for everyone, myself included. The one, the only, Marshall Ramsey. Marshall is a two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist. He's an editorial cartoonist and author. He's currently the cartoonist for the Clarion-Ledger, the editorial cartoonist there. His book of short stories, Fried Chicken and Wine, is a local bestseller. If you want to keep up with Marshall, you can check out his website at marshallramsey.com and on Twitter at @MarshallRamsey. Marshall, I don't know if we were required legally to say that to get you here tonight, but we thank you for coming.
Well, happy Valentine's Day.
Same to you. We should be with our wives, but we know they're both watching. Right?
They are both watching.
Now tell us what you're going to do tonight. You're going to kind of listen, do what you do, listen and observe what happens politically in this state and just sort of draw what comes to mind?
That's right. I'm going to do an editorial cartoon by the end of the show.
So what if your mind changes halfway through? Because we're going to check in with you periodically. I guess you'll just scrap that and start over?
I'm going to have to draw very fast. Actually, I'm going to draw you, I think. Really? No, okay.
I don't think anybody would watch.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I guess we've heard of a live blog. This is more kind of like a live blot sort of thing?
A live cartoon, and we're going to follow it throughout the show. They're going to come back to me, and by the end of the show, there'll be a completed cartoon.
This could be very interesting.
That's right.
Well, we know your talent. We look forward to seeing what you come up with, Marshall.
Well, I'm very proud to be your sidekick tonight.
Could use one sometimes. Thank you. We will get on to our first topic at issue tonight, the School Children's Religious Liberties Act. It has passed both the House and the Senate and is now on its way to the governor's office. But that may not be the end of it. At issue this week, religion in schools, something many people might be surprised is an issue at all. Isn't it already protected by the Constitution? According to some Mississippi lawmakers, it needs more protection.
What's happening is we have students and teachers out there whose rights are being suppressed because people don't fully understand the contours of the Establishment Clause cases. So we're trying to clarify that for them, an overall state policy. The key is this, kids need to express those religious sentiments at times, even if we disagree with them, and they certainly have that right under current case law.
Currently, the U.S. Constitution protects prayer in school as long as it's done privately. What some Mississippi lawmakers want to do is further expand what is allowed.
Bear in mind, the court's been very clear on the idea of kids leading, teachers, for example, leading a prayer group. That's, the courts will never allow that. However, a child that prays, for example, at a graduation ceremony exercise, if there was a limited public forum that was created for that, that might be accepted as long as it was not state-sponsored speech. Likewise, to clarify, for example, that if a child wishes to write an exam, some sort of classroom work or assignment on some religious figure or an idea, that would not be punished unnecessarily. Expression across the board would be protected.
And certain gatherings would be fair game, pardon the pun, when it comes to prayer.
And I'd like someone to step forward and tell me what's wrong with having prayer before a high school football game.
But for local religious leaders, the issue is not as easy to define.
I don't see how it benefits anyone, really. I mean, I suppose in a community where it's truly homogenous and everyone believes the same way and goes to the same church, then I can see how this would be a comfortable thing. But as soon as you have any kind of diversity, there's nothing protecting the students of the majority faith from having to hear a minority student pray in his or her own way over the loudspeaker at school. And I don't believe that's actually going to harm anyone, but to the extent that we all have the right as U.S. citizens to opt out of public prayer, to not be led in a prayer that is not our own, it just seems like a clear violation of that principle.
J. Hugh Brabham, longtime administrator of Clinton's Parkway Baptist Church, is a big believer in the power of prayer, but he's also a big believer in the Constitution and thinks these bills may not be worth the effort. He points the legislators to the Department of Education's website.
And they have a very clear guideline of what is acceptable religious expression in schools. And it's very clear, point by point, about what you can wear, when you can meet, what you can do. And the bottom line in most cases is you cannot coerce or have a captive audience and make them pray, make them listen, make them do these things, which I think most of us, if we believe our Constitution, ought to agree with.
Both the House and the Senate have passed the School Children's Religious Liberties Acts. Now it's on Governor Bryant's desk, and beyond that, who knows? And for more on this issue, we are joined by a special guest. Bear Atwood is from the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. She is the legal director at the Mississippi branch of the ACLU, and she's a Mississippi transplant. We're happy to have her here tonight. Thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And tell me what the ACLU's position is on this bill.
So our position is that we don't need any law. We already have well-established law that permits students to pray in school. Unfortunately, this goes beyond that well-established law and really does set up some unconstitutional circumstances that would do exactly as the bishop just talked about, put some school children in the place of being a captive audience, being coerced to listen to prayer that may not be what their family's faith is, that may not agree with their religious upbringing.
Is that really what it would do? It would allow that type of thing to happen, and that's what y'all are against.
Sure. So if the school says every single morning at school announcements, we're going to have a student speaker who has the right to express their religious viewpoints, and clearly that's what this is encouraging, then for that period of time, every student in the school is going to listen to that religious viewpoint. And as a parent, that may not be what you want your children to hear. As a minister, a clergy person, that may not be what you want your congregants to hear, because it's not how you view religion. And certainly for non-believers, that's also something that's very uncomfortable. So yes, it would set up a time when the entire school community is a captive audience.
But it would be open to any religion, at least the way it's written, would it not?
Sure, it would be open to any religion. However, in a state that is predominantly Christian, absolutely, it's pretty difficult to be a minority religion, and we'd have to see how it was implemented. But I suspect that students would not be encouraged to express religious viewpoints that were outside the majority.
One of the viewpoints in the story there that we used to set up this interview was saying he'd like for someone to come forward to tell him what's wrong with a prayer before a high school football game. How would you respond to that?
So I guess what I don't understand is why we need a prayer before a high school football game. We need a great football game. We need to see great players go out and have a wonderful game. We need to see a community come together. But what happens when you have school-sponsored prayer is that you divide communities. The people who are part of that religion, the majority religion, they're the insiders. And the people who aren't, they're the outsiders. And so instead of bringing a community together, in fact, what it can do is divide a community. And when we all should be paying attention to football, instead, people are feeling uncomfortable, and they just want to watch a football game.
Without this bill, what kind of, because some have described it as an effort to clarify what is and isn't allowed, that you have some school districts who are so worried about overstepping their bounds or doing something that is not permitted that they don't allow anything, or that they're scared to allow excuse me, any form of religious expression, whether it's school sanctioned or not. Would this bill help clarify that, and are there already enough laws in place, the way the law is written now and the way the Constitution is written, to allow this to happen, allow there to be small gatherings and school prayer that's not sanctioned by the school necessarily? So,
I mean, there's a lot of law, a lot of case law. We have the federal law, the Equal Access Act, signed in 1984 by President Reagan, that sets up that if you receive federal funding, which of course all of our schools do, then you have to allow religious clubs in the same way you would allow any other club on your campus. We have great guidance from the federal government, from the state government. You know, the Mississippi Department of Education has a wonderful website that lays out a lot of information. And every school board attorney in the state knows the law, and they are giving their clients advice about what exactly they can and can't do. when a school goes too far, and sometimes they do, they say, oh, you can't talk about religion in homework. Absolutely not, you can. Students can talk about their religion, their faith, express their own faith in their homework as long as it's germane to the assignment. And if you're being told, no, you can't do that in your school, I want you to call the ACLU, because we'll stand up for your right to pray as a student in school, just the way we'll stand up for your right to not have school-sponsored prayer.
Understood. And so it's not that the ACLU is against prayer at school, it's against how the school would handle it and whether the school would sponsor it and whether there's a captive audience.
Absolutely. I mean, what we want is for students to have the right to express their First Amendment rights, which include their religion, in the way they could express any other First Amendment rights. They can wear, if their dress code allows, non-uniforms, they can wear a T-shirt. They can wear, a cross. They can, come to school and talk about their religion. They can have clubs. They can meet at the flagpole. That's all perfectly legal.
Bear Atwood with the Mississippi ACLU, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And we should point out we had invited a local pastor to join us this evening to speak on the other side of this issue, and he was unable to make it this evening. We do have plenty more still at issue tonight, including the look at appointed superintendents that we promised you. What's it like in your school district, and how will these bills affect you? Plus, we'll check back in with everyone's favorite political cartoonist. I'm almost afraid to see what you've come up with over there, Marshall. We'll find out here in just a moment as we continue.
Coming to Independent Lens.
They called him names, and worse.
Plot to murder moderate civil rights leader Whitney Young.
And while angry youths took to the streets, Whitney Young was in boardrooms, convincing corporate giants to hire black people.
Whitney understood power, and he understood politics.
The Power Broker, Whitney Young's fight for civil rights.
Monday at 9 on MPB.
This February, explore African American history. Follow Whitney Young in his fight for civil rights.
He understood power and he understood people.
Remember television pioneer Alex Haley and his groundbreaking series Roots.
It was riveting. He was a master storyteller.
And celebrate the talents of Rosetta Tharpe, godmother of rock and roll.
She was a phenomenal showwoman.
It's all here during Black History Month on PBS.
Several minutes into the program now. Has to be enough time for our favorite cartoonist to do a little damage. We saw a little bit of scribbling there. Sorry, scribbling is probably undermining your work.
No, I've actually made my living scribbling, so it's quite good.
It's very informative, and it's amazing to a lot of people how somebody who does what you do can take complex issues, like the ones we're talking about tonight,
right,
and summarize it all somehow into essentially brushstrokes and scribbles. I don't understand how you do that.
Some days I wonder how I do it too. But really, honestly, if you want to go to a beautiful place for weather, you go to San Diego. If you want to go to a place that's paradise for politics, you come here. So it's really not that hard. Trust me.
Some years are better than others.
Yeah.
Well, what have you come up with? What are you working on over there
Well,
so far?
Today was a deadline day, big day up at the legislature,
Yeah.
and there may be some breaking news about Medicaid expansion. So
Okay.
I was thinking of that.
You're covering up with your hand. We want to see what you've got under
sorry,
there. Is it a mystery? I mean, we're gonna...
No, it's not really a mystery. It's just a sketch at this point.
Okay, I see some hearts for
Yes,
Valentine's Day.
It is Valentine's Day. I have Speaker Gunn.
Yes.
Yes, he's looking good. Got the teeth, got the ears. He's looking sharp. So.
And is that a donkey?
It is a donkey. A Democrat, of course. There aren't many of those around, so you kind of have to put labels on them these days. They're kind of rare, like dodos.
All right, Marshall, this is going to be good. All right, the beginnings of his next masterpiece right here on At Issue. We'll check back in with you here in just a minute. Marshall, now that we have that out of the way, though, let's move on to our next topic at issue, appointed school superintendents. It's a bigger issue than you might think. Also a big issue this week in the Mississippi legislature, school superintendents, and whether they should be appointed or elected. There are 147 elected superintendents in the entire United States, and 64 of those are in Mississippi. New bills in both the House and the Senate would get rid of those.
You know, we have some districts where we only have 6, 7, and 8 people qualified to be superintendent in that county, and that's just a woefully inadequate applicant pool. Nearly half of our counties have fewer than 20 people qualified to be superintendent. So you're looking at a county where maybe they only have 20 people who could be superintendent, whereas if they were allowed to have an appointed superintendent, they could look at every qualified administrator in the United States.
Face value, these bills are designed to make sure every Mississippi county has access to the best possible candidate pool to run their school district, whether that candidate is homegrown or from some far-off place. But what happens to those superintendents currently in place who were elected to their position if the bills become law?
Well, they can keep that elected superintendent they have. They would just be appointed. There are some counties who are lucky enough to have a number of qualified individuals. However, 9 out of our top 10 districts, according to the QDI, have an appointed superintendent.
And that 1 of 10 with the elected superintendent, DeSoto County, home of Senator Chris Massey, who supports one version of the bill.
The Senate bill, of course, in DeSoto County, ours is elected, and the Senate bill has a provision in there that it leaves it up to the voters in the county to decide that. And, you know, we're putting it back into the voters' hands to decide whether they want elected or appointed superintendents. So I like the Senate bill, you know. As far as liking whether they're appointed or not, you know, I think you can make a case for both ways. You know, our elected superintendent's doing a good job, and you know, and in other parts of the state, the appointed ones are doing a good job. So I think it depends on the area of the state that, you know, where it's going on.
Yeah. One man with a real perspective on the bill is Pearl Public School District Superintendent Ray Morzino. He is appointed and compares being appointed to running a corporation.
You live and work in the community, and so you answer to your community and to your, you know, the students and the whole community, but you also answer to a board. It's just like, I guess, being the CEO of any organization where you have a board that you answer to. And so, you know, that's the setup we have here in Pearl, Mississippi.
As an appointed superintendent, it's easy for Morzino to see one of the first pitfalls of being an elected superintendent.
In an elected campaign, whether it be for a superintendent or what have you, you have to take some focus off of your job and put it onto being reelected. So, you know, the appointed, I think, would take that away, which is a good thing in my opinion, because then your focus can be, you know, on the education of students rather than trying to be reelected. So,
another positive he sees, Morzino echoes Representative Mayo.
I think it will open up for maybe some of your smaller communities that have elected superintendents, that it would increase the pool of applicants. There's nothing wrong with bringing in talent that may not be within that community at that time. So I think that can make a difference. And again, in our larger areas, we have a lot of times plenty of qualified applicants. But if you take some smaller communities, they may not have that many of qualified applicants. So I think it could be a good step in the right direction.
Whichever direction the Mississippi legislature ends up going on this topic, one thing is clear. 2013 may just be the year of education reform in this state. For more on this, we figured we might get some more insight from some of the folks who spend all of their time stalking the halls of the Capitol. So we're joined by MPB's own Capitol reporter, Jeffrey Hess, who has the latest on that front, as well as some late-breaking news on a story that few of us really saw coming. We'll get to that in just a minute, Jeffrey, but let's back up to the superintendents. This idea of enlarging the applicant pool is sort of the critical argument here, right?
It is one of the main points that people who are supporters of appointed school superintendents make. This is not the first time this has come up in the legislature. It's passed the Senate repeatedly, and it's important to point out that there's about 150 school superintendents that are elected nationwide. Of that, 64 of them are in Mississippi. And there's 14,000 school districts across the country. So it really is quite an outlier for Mississippi to be electing its school superintendents.
Marshall Ramsey was just saying in the break that this is the first state he's lived in where we did elect school superintendents. So it is unusual.
Yeah, and part of the idea goes back to it's a home rule issue. You want people in the local community invested in their schools. You want them to be in control of their local schools. It's a long-standing tradition with public schools. That's why the flip side of appointed school superintendents is the legislature's also trying to get all elected school boards to appoint those superintendents so that the people in those communities still have an invested say in what their schools are doing.
But either way, it represents a big change for some of these districts, especially for some where part of the board is elected and part of the board is appointed already.
Oh, you're talking, people have been doing this for decades. So people who have been electing their school superintendent for all this time, they want to still continue to do that. And it is very complicated if you've got the school boards that are set up in very different ways, elected at very different times, or appointed in very different ways to try and shift the entire state to something that's more uniform, especially when you have the possibility of electing a whole new school board all at one time could really disrupt the continuity of a school.
All right, we mentioned something late breaking from the Capitol today. That was some movement on abortion. Tell us exactly what this is about.
Well, this year abortion's kind of been something of a quiet issue. Last year, anti-abortion advocates had a laundry list of issues they wanted to get covered. This year, it's been more of a back burner issue, and it really cropped up today with something called the Defense of Women's Health Act that was in the Senate. It passed the Senate. It's a regulation of abortion-inducing drugs. Currently, there's not a whole lot of regulation in the state surrounding how women who go to doctors who get these pills that would induce an abortion rather than what people typically think of as a surgical abortion.
So this is not the morning after pill. This is RU486.
Yeah, this is different from the morning after pill. The morning after pill is got to be taken within 5 days. These abortion-inducing drugs can be taken up to 9 weeks, and it's a schedule of drugs that a woman can take that'll induce abortion.
And currently, they're not. The records aren't kept by the Department of Health, and this bill, among other things, would change that.
And this is a pretty big sticking point for anti-abortion activists who feel that this is equivalent to a surgical abortion, and they're pretty upset that the state doesn't keep as tight of records on this type of procedure. And so this bill was an attempt to bring more regulation to the abortion-inducing drugs. Now, the State Medical Association was pretty concerned about it when it came out. They felt it was too far-reaching. It would require doctors to only use it in FDA-approved ways and not off-label ways, and they thought that could cause doctors to criminalize what's pretty standard medical procedures. Senator Bryce Wiggins, he's out of Pascagoula, he authored an amendment to kind of tone that bill down.
And not everybody's happy about that.
No, not everybody's happy about that.
All right. We heard from some folks about that now.
Mm-hmm. We have from Senator Wiggins. We also have some Senator Debbie Dawkins, and she's not happy with the bill either way.
All right.
It's pro-patient and it's pro-physician, but also it's pro-life. And I think we all know in here that physicians, they are sworn to duty to protect life. That's why they are physicians. And it's a pro-life amendment.
This bill has nothing to do with protecting women and everything to do with politicians inappropriately inserting themselves into personal health care decisions. I cannot find any language in this proposed act that would have helped women from becoming pregnant in the first place. If our goal is to assist in women's health and reducing teen pregnancy, why are we not pushing prevention initiatives instead of trying to reduce health care options?
So do we think this is the beginning of a larger argument on abortion this year?
Well, anti-abortion activists they're upset with the amendment that rolls it back. The bill that got passed to the Senate still keeps a couple of key things they want. It still has the tracking provisions. It still requires women to come back for a follow-up visit, and it would allow only doctors to distribute these pills. But I talked with one anti-abortion activist afterwards, and she says they took the life out of a pro-life bill. They say they can't support this, and that they're going to hope to amend it in the House where they say they have more friends. So it's a bill that got through, and not a lot of people either on the pro-life or the pro-choice side seem to like it very much.
We see a lot of news about the abortion clinic. I would imagine there are a lot of people out there who don't realize that this option even exists in Mississippi, that there is this medication essentially that accomplishes, that has the same result.
And it's interesting because that's actually the crux of the state's argument in favor of the abortion clinic regulations, is the state says women can go to these other doctors and get these procedures. So the state is pinning their hopes on the ability of women to go to their local doctor, to go to their local clinic to get that, to justify shutting the clinic in Jackson down.
All right, quickly, we're about out of time, but what happened with Medicaid today?
There was actually a rather surprising move on Medicaid. The Speaker of the House quickly moved it into the Rules Committee, which tabled it, and he sent out a press release almost immediately saying that, we've killed the Senate Medicaid bill. That means the only bill that's left is the House version of the bill, which does not include a Medicaid expansion. That's something Democrats have been, it's pretty much their only legislative priority this year is to get the Medicaid expansion bill. So the deadline for motions to reconsider is tomorrow. There could be another big showdown tomorrow morning. If it doesn't get out, Democrats say they're ready to start fresh. I talked with a high-ranking Democrat after the press release came out. He says, we welcome this fight. We welcome the opportunity to debate it. It's unusual that the Speaker would move it into a committee like that, but not out of the question, and it's just another move in the long game on the chessboard.
And it's within his power. All right, we will be watching. Jeffrey Hess, thank you very much. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. Not that we're calling Marshall Ramsey fat, but we couldn't let the program end tonight without seeing what he came up with. So when we come back from this very fast break, we'll check back in with the Uber cartoonist. Be afraid, but don't go away. And this reminder, you can check us out online and on your mobile device, facebook.com/issueMPB for political news affecting Mississippi. Our Twitter handle is @IssueMPB, and we're tweeting all things political and Mississippi.
Antiques Roadshow is discovering treasures in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
What's it like meeting the president?
Well, I walked in and there was a crowd full of men in coats, and I said, okay, which one's the president? Oh my gosh.
It's a lot.
I'm speechless.
It's a good day, isn't it?
Yes.
Next time from Myrtle Beach on Antiques Roadshow.
Monday at 7 on MPB.
Hi, I'm Mark Wahlberg. Next time on Market Warriors, we're in New York's Washington County, where the price of one of these Target items will double at auction. Which metal makes the most profit? A wrought iron bird cage, nickel wall chimes, or this wood cane with a sterling silver band? And which picker ends up the runaway winner?
Come on, go. I'm going to enjoy this moment.
Find out next time on Market Warriors.
Monday at 8 on MPB.
All right, let's see. We've covered religion, we've covered kids and religion, and we covered lawmakers. Marshall Ramsey, we might as well have handed it to you on a silver platter. And a few other things mixed in there too, right?
And you threw in Medicaid just for fun.
Yes.
Valentine's Day.
And abortion. We've had quite a few topics.
It's a smorgasbord. So I think I've got something, though.
Well, let's see it.
Yeah.
Reveal.
Okay.
Here's the big reveal.
It is.
All right, explain this to us.
It's the Speaker giving his Valentine to the Democrats. Ain't happening, go away. Nope, forget it, buzz off. Happy Valentine's Day from Speaker Gunn.
Hey, none of those were in my little pack of candy hearts this
Mine
year.
were. I got that. So.
Very nice. The donkey obviously representing the
Democratic Party. Yeah.
Now, we had you do this in it's been 27 minutes according to my watch.
That's right. If you'd give me 25, I might have choked. But 27, I was good.
Do you typically come up with something and draw it that quickly, or was this extra pressure for you tonight?
No, a little bit of extra pressure tonight. Yeah, usually 2-3 hours to do a cartoon.
And you didn't ever start and start over. You started. You got a concept at the beginning.
I kind of had to go with the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah. Well, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, so then when you do these on a regular basis, though, you do them in color. So do you draw them like that?
I draw
come
them
up
like
with
that.
your concept, draw it, and then come back and color it in?
I color it in. I put it on the computer and color it that way.
So it's digitally colored?
Yes. And they give me crayons. So sometimes I do a crayons too.
Do people bug you a lot to get you to do a caricature of themselves? And
Once.
do you only once?
Yeah, then they see the caricature and they never ask me again. It's funny how that happens.
Because you tend to exaggerate features, because that's what you are supposed to do, I guess.
That's right. Speaker's Gunn's ears, for instance, and the gap in his teeth.
Which is exaggerated there in your drawing. And so I guess they run that risk of knowing that if you have any distinctive feature, it's going to be exaggerated in the caricature.
Yeah, maybe a surgeon uses a scalpel, I use a chainsaw. That's kind of how subtle I am. So.
Very nice. So I would think this has some value. It's been on TV. I mean, it was just a scribble for you here, but maybe we could auction that off or something.
I'll just write Downton Abbey on it. It'll be priceless.
And keep it in the PBS family.
That's right.
Yes, very nice. All right, Marshall. We thank you for sitting in with us tonight, and happy Valentine's Day. Thank you to your wife for letting you.
That's right, honey. Thank you for lending me to.
Very good. Marshall Ramsey, thanks. And with that, we will wrap things up. As always, we want to thank everyone for being on the program tonight, and we thank you for watching. Happy Valentine's to you all. May Cupid throw many arrows your way.